Conversations as sequential interchanges unfold in a certain order. And so when we study conversations, we learn that there's this structure. And you have a beginning, a middle, and an end basically for a conversation. At the beginning of a conversation, it includes first a greeting or an introduction of sorts. And if you know the person pretty well, then you can predict what the greeting will be like. In other cases, though, we have some rituals related to greetings that you can guess. Someone will say, "How you doing? What's up? How are you feeling today?" Those sorts of things. And there's usually a reference to the physical context where you are, a reference to thoughts and feelings that you have, a reference to the other person, and then humor or other lighthearted remarks to break the ice. This is the beginning of a conversation. Some people will zoom through the beginning of a conversation and move into the body of a conversation very quickly, whereas other people, it takes them a little while to warm up. In the body of a conversation, it includes small talk, which are basic idea exchanges and gossip. Now, when some people hear that word gossip, they're like, "Oh, aghast, someone would gossip about someone else." But gossip is not just negative talk about other individuals. It can be positive talk about other individuals. And many times you are engaging in what would be labeled gossip without even probably realizing that's the label for it. For example, you run into a friend over in the Baker Patillo Student Center. You're getting a bite to eat. They say, "Hey, how you doing?" Saying, "Good." They ask you, "Have you seen so-and-so today?" And it's a common friend that you have. And you're like, "No, they're out of town. They had a job interview, didn't you know?" And they're like, "No, I didn't know that." And so that in and of itself would probably be labeled as gossip, yet there's nothing negative about that exchange. So the body of a conversation is composed of basic idea exchanges and gossip. Also qualities of casual social conversations or problem consideration conversations. Problem consideration conversations are when you're trying to solve a problem. And you think to yourself, probably, problem. Does it have to be a big problem? No, not necessarily. Where you're going to eat tonight with a group of friends could be the problem. And you might start the discussion with identifying what the problem is. "Hey, you hungry?" "Yeah, I'm hungry. Let's go grab a bite to eat." Okay, you've identified the problem. Next, though, you need to generate ideas for how to solve the problem. And you need to also discuss what are the limitations, boundaries, or criteria of a good solution. And so you might say to a friend, "Hey, I have an idea. Why don't we go to Antipasta's?" And they say, "That sounds great, but it's not in my budget. Taco Bell's more along the lines of my budget." So you might acquiesce and say, "Okay, so we need to find something cheaper, but I'm really not into Taco Bell. How about we go to a different fast food place?" So you start to get an idea for what people prefer and what people's ideas are in the discussion, and at an eventual point though, you have to reach a solution that is meeting everybody's needs and making everybody basically happy. And if you can do that collaboratively, that's best. And then after you reach the solution, you need a plan for implementation, because if you just say, "All right, let's go eat at Whataburger," they're like, "Okay, well, are we going right now? Are we going in 30 minutes? Are we going to ride together? Where do we go from here?" And so you have to figure that out. And then at some point, there's going to be a formal close to a problem consideration conversation. In any conversation, though, disengagement will happen at a certain point. It may be formal, it may be informal, it may be indicated verbally by saying, "Look, I have to go, I'll talk to you later," or maybe a nonverbal indication that the conversation's over. Maybe you wave at the other person, maybe you use proxemics to disengage by putting physical distance between you and the other person, or maybe you start looking away, or you have silence to indicate the conversation's over with. So there are a variety of ways that you can disengage from a conversation. You may be thinking to yourself, "Okay, that seems kind of a lot for a conversation." And sometimes I might call a friend, make a quick cell phone call to them, ask them how they're doing, say you want to meet up later, pick a place you want to meet up. Does that constitute as a conversation? Yes, it does. It probably means though you worked through the beginning stages in the body of a conversation and disengaged very quickly. You didn't spend a lot of time in any one stage. And conversations are going to vary in terms of how much time you spend on them. And there are certain characteristics of a conversation. There is fluctuations in all these different characteristics. Now, when we look at the fluctuations, first of all, formality. conversation is going to vary in terms of formality, and what began as a very formal conversation could take a more informal tone. For example, students come to my office all the time. They may begin with a list of concerns, discussing them with me, and then at a certain point, we start talking about interests that they have, and it becomes very informal. Also, another characteristic of a conversation is turn taking. That is, you actually take turns. There's a give and take. There's an exchange going on. Topic change is also inherent in terms of a conversation. Think about it. How do you get from topic A to topic B? It seems like they're so different from one another, yet by association, one thing leads to another, and then all of a sudden you're on a topic you never planned. That's the art of a conversation, though. Talk time also varies in conversations. Usually you want to have equitable talk time. You don't want to hog all the time. You want to try and share it. Also, there's a scriptedness to conversations in that we have a routine that we rely on in a conversation. There's certain things that we come to expect. Usually the more intimate the relationship and the longer that you've known that person, so you have a history with them, you can anticipate the scripts that will occur in conversations. But you shouldn't take them for granted, because then you might stop listening to the other person, and that may have a negative impact on the relationship. Also, all conversations have a conversational audience, and hopefully you're adapting to that conversational audience. You're adapting your language, your nonverbal cues, and everything to the other person so that they can better understand you.